So just as we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land.
Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that
It seems the AI has already got in there. So acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which the Sydney Law School stands, the Gadigal people, and pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. I think as teachers, we tend to fall into the habit of providing students with feedback that might primarily be evaluative, telling students what is correct and incorrect about their responses. And you might, like me, have some of these kinds of sort of marginalia in students' work that doesn't necessarily help students understand the feedback when it's in isolation. This evaluative kind of feedback tells students that something might be incorrect, but it doesn't necessarily guide them towards how they might improve their responses. So there is definitely scope to expand upon the feedback that we give students that is specific and identifies the processes that students need to undertake in order to improve. And this is often referred to as process level feedback, as distinct from task level or evaluative feedback. It's feedback that is really aimed at the processes used to create a product or complete a task. And the literature on feedback tells us that it's more effective and it enhances deeper learning among students. But having said that, we are all very much pressed for time, and there are only so many hours in the day, only a limited number of teachers and markers available to provide detailed feedback, and on top of that, there are often limited educational design resources available to assist coordinators in creating the kinds of feedback that promote continuous improvement among our students. The reality is that time constraints and resource limitations make it really challenging to give students really detailed feedback that goes beyond evaluation and guides them through a learning process. So one of the ways that I've tried to address this issue here in Sydney is to use an AI agent called the Law Feedback Expander in a way that helps teaching teams and markers quickly and hopefully efficiently develop sort of banks of predetermined process level feedback that they can then essentially copy and paste into students' work as appropriate in order to, again, provide that process-driven kind of approach to helping students improve. Our particular prompt here is, sorry, our particular agent here is based on Cogniti, developed here at Sydney, and involves not only a prompt, but access to a group of resources. So the agent will, in providing a response, access the AGLC4, our university's assessment and feedback policies, literature on feedback, as well as some resources that we've curated from the Judicial Commission here in New South Wales. And it will also access the information that we already provide to students in the LMS on legal writing and how to respond to essays, problem questions, create case notes, and that sort of thing. So that's all sitting already in the agent, ready for an educator to come along and enter in some information about the kind of task that students are undertaking and that they're marking, the relevant authorities that students probably need to cover in their response, and if it's a problem question, maybe adding in the fact scenario and giving the agent the marking criteria and the rubric for what they are going to be marked against. Then it's really a process of just adding in sort of that brief, somewhat isolated evaluative feedback, comment by comment or groups of comments, and then asking the agent to enhance that by again, including more process-driven ideas in the feedback, suggesting alternatives, using metacognitive strategies in the feedback to get students thinking about how they're learning and what they're doing in order to learn specific content or ideas or concepts, as well as give them some awareness of the genre-specific characteristics that might differentiate, say, a problem question response from a research essay. I'm not brave enough to try this live, so I have got a couple of screenshots here. So in entering the law feedback expander, the agent asks the user, a marker or a teacher, for 4 pieces of information. Again, the description of the actual task that they're marking, the marking criteria, the relevant authorities, and that initial feedback. What's the first thing that you want to expand upon? And so here the initial feedback was along the lines, this was a problem question, I think, about trespass and drones. So you can see the original idea was, Mary clearly has title to sue for trespass as she is the occupier, etc., etc. But, this doesn't quite offer ideas about how students can improve their response with these concepts and ideas. So fed into the feedback expander, it comes back with some process level feedback for, in this case, responses by students that were clearly inadequate. And if we sort of have a deeper look at what it's actually saying here, there are a number of elements that are process driven. So the feedback is, first of all, pointing out the importance of precedent in responding to problem questions. We've got a section here asking the student to look at how definitions from case laws apply to the specific scenario being marked. It asks, or rather it gives feedback that asks students to apply the principles from one case to another, and this sort of knowledge transfer being fundamental to legal problem solving. And it is somewhat directive in telling students, look, you must review the case. Sometimes we forget that, we'll give students a case or a statute and expect that they will look at it, but it's kind of important to really signal that we want the students to do something, in this case, analyze the details, look at its facts, its judgment, the judgment, the legal reasoning, again, engaging the student in a deeper level of legal analysis. And potentially, the marker has saved a lot of time from having to type that out or write that onto a student's paper by copying and pasting it and maybe adjusting it and personalizing it for a specific student or a specific task. We can also differentiate between adequate responses that might need a little bit more to get past just a pass, into a credit or a distinction kind of answer, as well as feedback that is really for students who have provided something that's a little bit inadequate, that need quite a lot of guidance. And we've set up the expander so that for some reason, the AI might expand greatly on a point, more so than we expected, or by contrast, might provide a very short answer. We can expand or condense its responses by hitting E or C. It's built into the prompt there to help educators decide upon the specific level of feedback that they want to give at any given time. So obviously this is an iterative process. It's not anywhere near perfect. A lot of time has been spent and continues to be spent on collecting feedback from teachers and markers. Their key concern is time, as you might expect. Some are not necessarily comfortable with the tools And obviously integrating the use of AI into workflow is something different, especially if you're used to marking students' work on paper, or just because a task is done on paper. And where you have large teaching teams or marking teams, the consistency, do you organize all of this in advance, or do you let students let markers create their own feedback? And the other challenge there being, of course, the awareness of the function and the importance of this process level feedback is something that continues to grow. Next steps, I think there's probably a good cause for some educational research to take place here, measuring what the students' perception of all of this is. Obviously, one of the things that we try to do is to be transparent and let students know that some of their feedback has been generated by AI. Dig deeper into the experience of educators and those larger marking teams, and to see if there is an impact on student performance. Are students dealing with the feedback appropriately, and is it reflected in their work going forward? And are there questions around about feedback literacy in that respect? Finally, one of the things that might be useful going forward, just from a purely theoretical point of view, is the idea that there's space for discourse analysis in terms of the kinds of discourse used by AI versus humans providing feedback. So that's a very brief introduction to our AI agent for streamlining and creating process level feedback. I wonder if there's any questions I can answer in real time.